Love is funny in our language, specifically because we have put so many definitions to it. We have put, oh, I love pizza, and I love God. But what does that mean? And I'm sure you've heard the lessons on agape versus phileo, the Greek words for love. But really, when you read through the scriptures, there's very few instances where it's talking about brotherly love. It's usually always agape. So before we continue, I wanted to get that out of the way. I wanted to make sure you understood that when I say the word love, I'm not talking about I love pizza or I love the Broncos. I'm talking about the love we should have for one of those Christians and the love we have for God. When was the last time you followed the greatest commandment? Do you even know what the greatest commandment is? Did you know that Jesus gave us a greatest commandment? In Matthew chapter 22. In Matthew chapter 22, the Pharisees have heard about Jesus and how he has foiled the Sadducees. The Sadducees went to Jesus and they tried to trick him, and he answered their question satisfactorily. So the Pharisees are like, all right, we want a piece. We'll go and we'll trick Jesus, and we'll show them Sadducees how to really trick somebody. So they go to Jesus and they tell him, all right, Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? And Jesus says to them, love the Lord your God. Love. Sure, we love God, but do we really understand what that means? Jesus did not say, love God the best you can. But sometimes that's how we act like, he said. Oh, love God best I can, or when it's convenient, or when he does something good for me. If you're in Matthew chapter 22 looking at it in verse 37 and 38, you are seeing what Jesus is saying. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart. And as we continue tonight, the word all is going to be very important. It's not just some, not just most, not just 99%, all your heart. All is not open into interpretation. The word all means everything. So what does it mean to love God with all your heart? With all your heart. You see, the word heart here is also very confusing. So when you love with all your heart, we've now just used two very confusing words in the English language. Because heart could mean this thing that beats blood to my body. Or it could mean some nebulous thing that we just completely understand, but everybody knows what it means, kind of. My heart. So the word here that we want to look at is better translated your middle. Your middle, your gut. The part of you that makes up your most basic self. Your heart. Love God with all your heart. Well, what does that look like? You could make a big list of what that doesn't look like. It doesn't look like finding the splinter in everybody's eye. It doesn't look like trying to fix people. It doesn't look like a big long list of things. But what does it look like? What it looks like is giving all of my emotion to God. Every emotion I have, everything that comes from within my gut, my conscience, I love God with it. But it doesn't stop there. It also says, love the Lord your God with all your soul. And the soul is also a very complex word. Because the word Jesus is using here is not talking about our immortal soul. It's not talking about that part of you that's going to go up to heaven when you die. Or heaven forbid, to hell. A lot of people and scientists have tried to figure out what a soul weighs. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's people who will weigh people at the time of their dying, and they see this weight loss, and they're like, oh, a soul weighs 2 pounds, or whatever it is. And I think that's just silly, but they have tried to do it. But that's not the soul Jesus is talking about. Whether you think it's physical, or whether you think it takes up a part of your body or not, that's not what Jesus is talking about. You see, to love God with all your soul, Jesus is talking about our breath. The word soul there is probably even better translated as breath. Love the Lord your God with all your breath. Everything you say, the things that come out, your words, your actions, all of your soul. Not until we feel uncomfortable. Or I love God with all my soul until I've done more than everybody else, which is 72%, yeah. Whatever it is, with all of your soul. Love the Lord your God. Every word I say, every action I take, every word I speak, yes, that includes when someone cuts you off in traffic. That is probably, and this is way a side note, but that's probably a big time when Christians struggle a lot, at least from my experience. Because when we get behind that wheel of that car, we're not a Christian anymore, we're a driver, right? And we think that we can just say whatever we want. That's, unfortunately, especially for me, very wrong. Jesus has now said, love the Lord your God with all your emotions and all your actions. Well, that's got to be it. No more, right? That's all God needs from us. But if you continue reading, he says, love the Lord your God with all your mind. All of your mind. Now, this is not as simple as we try to make it. A nice thought a day. I loved God today with my mind. I had a nice thought. Jesus wants us to go deeper than that. You see, the word mind here that Jesus uses literally means our deep thought. Those thoughts that are in the back of our mind that maybe we don't even think about. Those deepest thoughts that we have, those feelings and those thoughts that we have about other people, do they love God? What does that look like? Well, I'm not saying that a bad thought can't slip in from time to time. I'm going to tell you a story of when that happened to me. I had just gotten my driver's license, and I was driving my dad's car, which later became my car, so I guess it was fair. But I'm driving, and I make this left-handed turn, and I'm on my way home, and I'm almost there. And I'm driving down the road, and a song comes on the radio I don't like, so I go to change it. And as I look down to change it, I look back up, the guy in front of me is braking and turning right. And so I slam on my brakes, but I still clipped him. And I still hit him, and I was like, oh man. And it wasn't bad. But 16-year-old Logan, the first thought that popped into his head was just go. Drive away, get out of here, leave it. And that's foolish. And if you've ever been in an accident, you know that's the stupidest thing you could possibly do. But that thought was just get out of here. That initial thought. That's not the type of thought I'm talking about. That's temptation. The thoughts I'm talking about are the ones that dwell. Love the Lord your God with all of your mind. Every thought from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. Is it loving God? There is no way that everybody here within the sound of my voice has literally given their all to God in this way. Everything, my heart, my soul, my mind, God is asking so much of my love. But it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. We have to remember that. That it's not about getting up and just sprinting until lunch, and then after, well, I've done my best so far today, I'm done. It's a marathon. But how do we start? How do we start loving God in the way we should? Well, you can start by marveling at Him. By just sitting back and saying, blessed be the name of the Lord.
We lift your name in all the earth. May your kingdom be established in your praises. As your people declare your mighty works, blessed be the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Blessed be the Lord God Almighty, who reigns forevermore. O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul,
begins with loving God, giving our all to God. That is the greatest command. But Jesus doesn't end it with just the greatest. If you know Matthew 22 and what Jesus says in his response to the Pharisees, he tells us there's a second one that is like the first. What does this mean? There's a second one? There's a building off of the first? Well, the second one is like the first. Well, what does that entail? Jesus is saying that it is like the first one. It's going to require all of what you have to offer. The law is very black and white in some places, but we often try to make it gray. All means all, not most. But Jesus doesn't make it so we have to guess. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. And it's probably easy to sit there and say, well, I know who my neighbor is. And we turn to Luke chapter 10, the parable of the Good Samaritan, where the man's beaten and left for dead and nobody helps him but the person you would least expect. But I'm afraid we've twisted Jesus' words here in Luke 10. We read this parable and we say, everyone is my neighbor. And obviously that is the case. But we miss the point Jesus is trying to really make. That Jesus wanted to make sure that we knew everybody is your neighbor, especially the people we don't like. Especially those who would harm us. Especially those who have said to our face, I hate you. It's an easy concept with a difficult conclusion. It's easy to love our neighbors when we agree. Yeah, I love my neighbor. I love my brother. I love my sister, but they better not cross me. When we fundamentally disagree with someone, it becomes even harder to love them. Do we still have to if we dislike them? And then here comes the hard part. The part that we trip up on the most. Love your neighbor, not just love your neighbor. Not just love them until they stop giving you love, but love them as yourself. And this is a whole nother level, Jesus. Now we have to tackle something really difficult. Jesus has just said that we are to love our neighbors, everyone we see, our brothers and sisters in Christ, those who we politically, maybe even spiritually disagree with, as ourselves. This includes family, friends, that guy who cut you off in traffic, the girl in the checkout line who gave you a dirty look, and even fellow Christians when they sin. Again, this is an all or nothing proposition. Jesus is not saying when it's convenient or if it works out today, love your neighbor. We aren't allowed to pick and choose who we love and when we love them. To put a stranger above yourself, to put someone you hardly know, a neighbor, above yourself is probably a skill you don't possess, because a lot of us don't. It feels illogical or wrong to put someone else above me. Why would I do that? It's against my nature. But that, church, is what loving your neighbor is. So why do we pretend like it's something else? How dare we try to take a command of Christ and fix it to fit us? We have more often than not made church about us. We have more often than not said, I need to make sure I love myself first, when that is directly in violation of the second greatest commandment. Love your neighbor as yourself. Instead of putting ourselves first, it's pretty easy. When we come together, we look at one another and we say, I love you. I put you above me. Now come and share the Lord.
We gather here in Jesus' name. His love is burning in our hearts like living flame. For through the loving Son,
love someone as yourself. This can be a difficult proposition for some people in our age. Because, yeah, we love ourselves, and we say that we sometimes put on a brave face, but we live in a world that thrives on putting others down to build oneself up. We live in this world that it's all about me, me, me. This has resulted in everyone acting like they are happy. Everyone pretending that they feel good, when in actuality they have locked deep down inside self-loathing, self-hatred. It is extremely difficult to love yourself as someone or to love others as yourself when you don't even love yourself, maybe even hate yourself. Therefore, we must realize before we love others, and really before we even love God, that we are worthy of love. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10 specifically says, "You are God's workmanship, His masterpiece." You see, God does not make mistakes. You are not an accident. You may have been an accident to your parents, but that doesn't mean you are an accident to God. You have a place here. God does not make mistakes. You are perfect because you are His. In order to treat others with love that we are asked to treat them, we must treat ourselves with love too. Not an arrogant love, not an I'm better than everybody else love, but I am a valuable piece of the church and a valuable to God. You are not worthless. You are not a lost cause, and you are absolutely not beyond saving. That's just what Satan wants you to think. In Psalm 139, verses 13 through 15, we see that God creates with intention. David said, "You knit me together in my mother's womb." You are not an accident. We talk about creation as if God spoke it into existence, which He did, but it was much, much, much more intimate than that. Because God doesn't just speak in the same way we speak. He thinks about what He's saying. He knows what He's doing. He puts time and effort into every word, into every fiber of your being, every atom you have. God knows it. He cares about you more than you can even comprehend. He loves you more than you can even comprehend. I had a friend one time who told me he felt like his life was just a game and God was watching it play out like a movie or a video game. That made me want to cry. God does not look at us like toys in an arcade. You see, when God looks at you, He sees you as a part of the most valuable thing He's ever created. The most important thing to Him that He's ever done. The human race. He loves you more than you can comprehend. You are the most prized possession as a part of the human race. This is why we should love others and love ourselves. When we hate ourselves, when we have self-loathing attitudes, we're loathing and hating God's creation. You are not an accident. You are here for a reason. The creator of all the universe, God, and His Son, Jesus Christ, the sinless Savior of the world, loves you. So love yourself. Love yourself. Again, not in an arrogant way, but in a way that says to the world, I matter because God loves me. His love lifted me.
I was sinking deep from sin, far from the peaceful shore, very deeply stained within, sinking to rise no more. But the Master of the sea heard my despairing cry. From the waters lifted me, now safe am I. Love lifted me, love lifted me. When nothing else could
I want to make sure you know that you're loved. There's people around you right now who love you more than you can even understand. Love transcends everything. I could end right now with 1 Corinthians 13. There's 3 remaining: faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. I mean, that's where we all go when we think of love, and you're probably surprised I haven't brought it up already. But I don't want to end there because you probably know it. You probably could recite it by heart. Love transcends everything. Time transcends law. It transcends people. Love cuts through anything that we could potentially put up in front of it. But I want to end, instead of 1 Corinthians 13, I want to end in John 13. In John 13, Jesus is about to die, and he knows it. He's about to die, and he knows it. And it comes to where it's time to wash the feet of the disciples, and nobody's there to wash the feet. And who gets up to wash the feet? Not the lowest apostle, not maybe somebody who was just kind of there, but Jesus. The man who is about to die for their sins washed their feet. And then at the end, he gets up and he tells them why. And in verses 34 and 35, he tells them, I have a new command. I have a new command to add on to those 2 that I already told you about. Love God, love others, and you got to make sure you love yourself. This is it. Verse 34, I give you a new command. Love one another just as I have loved you. You are to love one another. He said this right after washing their feet. Just the way I just loved you, you love each other. In verse 35, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. Do people see God through our love? Do people, when they look at you, they say, that is a Christian because of how much they love? We as Christians in the world, I'm not pointing fingers, but as Christians in the world in general, we have picked up some very unloving habits, haven't we? You probably have seen them, hopefully not today, but you've probably seen them in your lifetime. Nitpicking each other, gossiping. Why is it, this is off topic, but why is gossiping okay? Why? We do it. You may have done it today. Sorry. Gossiping. I hate it. Hateful speech, etc. There's this list of things that we do very unlovingly to each other and to others, and yet we're shocked when people come in here and they're like, I don't see God here. What do you mean you don't see God? Because God is love. Love can heal all wounds. But what we call love, what we have called love for so long, is actually just tolerance. I love you till I'm gone. Then I don't have to love you from my house. That's called tolerance, not love. What we call love is just putting up with somebody. Love can heal all wounds if we let it. Maybe tonight you don't feel like you have loved God. Or maybe tonight you don't feel like you've loved others. Or maybe even worse, you don't feel like you've loved yourself. You see, it's a triangle. God is obviously on top, and others and yourself are in there. And if you don't love one of those 3, you're incomplete. You can't love others if you don't love yourself. And Jesus plainly says, how can you say I love God and hate your brother? You can't. The triangle has to have all 3. It's the triangle between yourself, everybody you interact with every single day, and God. It's built to build upon each point. You can't have 2 without 1. When you leave here tonight, and you leave this building, and maybe you go to the store or to get dinner. I haven't had dinner. When you go out and you go to Walmart or your job tomorrow, how are people going to know you're a Christian? Because of those unloving habits we've adopted, we have taken to saying, I'm a Christian, and telling people, I'm a Christian. When in actuality, Jesus says, your love should tell them. You shouldn't have to tell people you're a Christian. They should say, oh my word, that's a Christian. That is what Jesus wants. It's one thing to tell them, it's another thing to show them. Love. You gotta love God. You gotta love others. You gotta love yourself. And if you haven't, you can start tonight. You can come forward and say, I haven't been loving. Or you can go back and talk to an elder. But to Christ be loyal and be true as we stand and as we sing.